Welcome everyone to the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Praggnanandhaa at the FIDE Candidates 2026. This is a big clash between two amazing players as Hikaru Nakamura comes to the game with his better half Atusha Porkashian. And Hikaru, well, he has had 2 losses and 3 draws in 5 rounds. No one could have imagined that he would play at this level, while Praggnanandhaa has had 1 win, 2 draws, 3 draws, and a loss. Here, 50% score as he comes in with his second Vaibhav Suri. Prag and Hikaru have kind of this interesting rivalry brewing. Prag managed to beat Hikaru at the FIDE World Cup and managed to eliminate him in 2023. That was a big result for Prag because he was a rising youngster back then, and Hikaru was like a well established grandmaster. And Prag has now established himself as well. So I would say that this one is much more close than it ever was. Prag has black, Hikaru has white. Prag, as always, before the game, takes his time, meditates. Look at his pose there. He's just very, very much stoic there. And he does that before every single game. He just closes his eyes. And there you have a handshake. And off we go. And Prag is back into his meditative pose as Hikaru plays pawn to d4. Believe Prag maybe says some kind of a prayer, because in that sense he then has to finish it before he begins. Could be, or he's just counting something. There's so many ways in which chess players try to get into the zone. Knight f6, c4, Hikaru plays, and now Praggnanandhaa goes pawn to e6. Hikaru has to maintain a fine balance between being solid here and also playing for a win. So it makes sense what he does here. Knight to c3, inviting Prag to play bishop b4 and get into Nimzo-Indian territory, which Prag takes up the challenge. Pawn to e3, the Rubinstein system. And the most natural way for white to play here is bishop d3, knight f3 and castles. But Prag, because he's gone b6, by the way, the main moves here are castles and maybe even d5. So b6, knight e2, and now Prag plays c5 in the center. a3, a good move. Now if you take here knight c3, this is small edge for white, very clear. So you come back as Prag, bishop a5, and Hikaru plays bishop to d2, breaking the pin. You have to be careful that with b4 your bishop doesn't get trapped. Right now it's not really a threat, so Prag castles, but something like rook b1 can threaten it. Hikaru goes pawn to d5, gaining space in the center. And now e takes d5 taken. If c takes d5, then bishop b7. So Hikaru goes knight d5. Now this is lesser played. There are around only 10 games with this move. And Prag now, I think, should take on d5. Yes, he takes it. And the point is, if you start with bishop a5, I have knight takes e3, grabbing another pawn and then picking this up. So c takes d5 makes a lot of sense. And now bishop takes bishop. Queen takes d2. And now bishop comes out to a6. A very nice move. Just looking at this diagonal. d6, knight d7. Continue normally is what Prag would like to do. Knight g3. Hikaru offers the trade of bishops. What you have to understand here is the pawn structure. In terms of pawn structure, white has a central majority here after takes, king takes. you will see that there are 3 pawns here, while black has a queenside majority, 3 versus 2. And so the one who uses the pawn majority better will get an advantage. Pragg goes d6, and you will see that white cannot castle, but it's not big of an issue because white can go h4. That's exactly what Hikaru does, and he can activate his rook this way. The king can take up the g1 square. Also, there's a question for Pragg whether he wants to play f5 or not to stop e4. For now he's going knight d7, and maybe Hikaru wants to play e4. Yes, so he clamps down on the f5 square. I think the position is sharpening up. It's getting exciting. Queen f6. The queen looks here also on this diagonal. Knight can jump to e5. And if h5, simply go h6. He goes rook e1. And now pawn to g6 played by Pragg. He stops the knight from jumping around, but at the same time does create a hook which Hikaru immediately latches onto, opening up the rook on h1. Knight to e5 play. Pragg's knight is also well positioned. f4 is now no longer a very easy idea, because the knight gets the g4 square. Rook goes to h3. And now maybe king g1. So pawn to b5 played. He may want to go c4 and knight d3. That could be his idea. So goes king g1. And now pawn to c4. Queen comes to h6. Now two ways to take care of this pawn takes pawn and mate threat. One is queen g7. The other is knight g4. And Pragg plays knight g4. He's careful not to blunder into some sacrifice and some mating attack. That's not happening. This is just winning. So comes back with the queen. And now Pragg can continue the game with rook a e8, I believe. Just get your rook into the game. He goes back knight e5. Well, the ideal spot for the knight is d3 to hit the rook. But Hikaru goes back to h6. And Pragg goes back knight g4. Queen d2. Does Pragg want to play on? Does he want to take a draw? Big question to him. The candidates is not just about the position on the board. He calls the arbiter. It's also about the tournament situation. With Pragg being on 2.5, Hikaru being on 1.5. I believe both want to win. Because Jahokir Sindarov is rushing ahead. And okay, they agree to a draw, and let's hear what the players have to analyze.